From a young age, the problems of the world overwhelmed me. Environmental destruction, rampant racism and poverty, the mark of brutality that my own father left on our home. At age 11, I started connecting my family's problems to the world's problems. I stopped eating meat, I swore off driving, and I still felt very isolated in hyper-individualistic consumer Los Angeles. I wanted to be part of collective struggle, not just reading about it in my bedroom. I wanted to find the we. One of the biggest misunderstandings we face is what Charles Eisenstein calls the myth of separation. The belief that we are better off divided, against, and apart. This myth and the misunderstanding leads to rampant homelessness, mental illness, pretty much every problem and ailment we face in society. It leaves us mired in fear. After high school, I moved down to the Bay Area and I started to put my we beliefs into action. I got arrested doing direct actions to stop the war. I traveled regularly down to southern Mexico to support an indigenous movement called Zapatismo. In my 20s, I moved to Syria, and I started to work as a journalist and teach Iraqi refugees. The next chapter of my life is the most known chapter, and one that you may already know something about. I was captured while hiking near an unmarked border between Iraq and Iran, and I was held as a political hostage by the Iranian government for 400 days in solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is a gray, limitless ocean that reaches out in front and behind us. It's an emptiness and a loneliness so vast that it threatens to erase us. Whether you're in solitary confinement for a week, a month, a year, or a decade, you experience the slow march of death. I survived the slow death of prison by remembering my values and by connecting my pain to something larger than myself. If solitary confinement was designed to shrink my spirit, I would find a way to expand. If it was meant to dehumanize me, I would find a way to love humanity more. I was learning to practice the we. When I was suddenly released and able to go back to the United States, now in my 30s, I learned that solitary confinement is considered torture by the United Nations. And it's used in our own prison system routinely as a control mechanism. As I've deepened into the work over the last 15 years, I've come to see that the monstrosity of mass incarceration in this country is not in response to crime rates. It's not in response to a desire to create safer communities. Looked at in historic context, our prison system is what it is not by neglect or by mistake, but by design. We put people in prison, we punish people. We punish them, the poor, for being poor. We punish the hurt for being hurt. And we punish Black and brown people for being Black and brown. Yes, this massive institution that warehouses millions of people and tortures them is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Despite the harsh realities that I have witnessed and faced, the we has always drawn me back to the practice of hope and possibility. And again has led me to question and try to understand why we've mired ourselves in this deep and horrible reality of mass incarceration. What helps me understand the history and current reality of the country we live in is the metaphor of a garden full of beautiful flowers growing in toxic soil. The toxic soil represents the unparalleled evil of chattel slavery and the genocide of Native peoples that our country is founded on. It also, early in our history, the invention of race pitted white European immigrants, like my Irish ancestors, against everyone else, teaching us that we had to give up our culture and our humanity in order to gain some sort of superiority over others, which was against our common interest. Systemic oppression has poisoned the soil of our garden, yet the flowers persist. People of all races came together to abolish slavery. And then again, in the civil rights movement, we gained rights and freedoms that our ancestors never dreamed of. And yet, this progress has been punished again and again by brutal systems of control. Jim Crow segregation, racist policing, the ghettoization of Black and brown Americans, and of course the criminalization of poverty, mental illness, and drug addiction, which has brought us mass incarceration. Our garden has been poisoned and ravished by fires and floods, yet somehow these flowers are so stubborn they continue to grow. They just keep blooming. When I was in prison, a profound realization for me was when I realized that if given the choice, I would never trade places with my guards. I was the one being psychologically tortured, and I didn't know if I would ever get out, and yet they could go home at night, but I pitied them. I knew that I wasn't there by choice, and I knew that if given the choice, I would rather be dehumanized than be the enforcer of dehumanization. As a we person, I believe that people with relative power and privilege are dehumanized and diminished by these systems of control, like the guards that I had in prison. So after prison, I was diagnosed with PTSD, survivor's guilt, and the impairment of my ability to live a full and satisfying life. I call this giving a fuck. I didn't just want to get out of prison, I wanted to get free. And I knew that similar to my experience as a child, I had to connect my healing to that of collective struggle and collective liberation. Trauma limits our imagination. It teaches us to shrink and to diminish ourselves by obsessing over how to protect ourselves from harm, which can all too often reinforce the wound. But trauma can also break us open, aerating our collective soil, bringing in the much needed nutrients and the waters of grief that can heal us. Can we be a we? Many, many days I feel like I'm not doing it very well. How can we defend our communities against these systems of oppression and still survive within them? There are forces of hate in this country that I believe may never go away. And yet, there are pockets of we everywhere. And the we is essentially who we are as a species, despite the fact that so many of us have been forced to forget. There's a growing recognition of the harm that me culture is doing to us. Resistance to these systems of oppression continues everywhere on the globe. And at the same time, there is a growing interest in healing modalities, in the wisdom traditions that have gone mainstream. This is a very important recognition that we are a traumatized nation with a deep desire to heal. It's been a heavy journey that I've taken you on today, and I want to end by inviting you into some of my own practice as a somatic therapist that has helped me really develop the capacity to continue to be with these realities and practice hope. So I want us all to really enjoy the next breath. Feel the energy in your body go back and down. Know that the world and the earth is holding you. As a child, I was burdened by these realities, but I'm not anymore. That's because I know that I'm not alone in holding them. I'm part of the we. In the we state, there is no shoulds or shouldn'ts. There's no comparing ourselves to others. In the we state, we know our place in the universe, in our communities, in our family. We feel it inside our bodies, and we see it reflected in the world all around us. We can be with this reality together. We can take care of each other. You may not agree with everything I've said about mass incarceration, but we can still sit together in the reality that it's harming us. In the we state, all healing is possible. We have everything that we need, and now we're ready to begin.